Severe weather last night in Norman, delaying the start of that game by 90 minutes and keeping the Sooners offense off the field for like another hour or so.
And we speak to our resident card shark, Brian Kelly, about his tips at the blackjack table. Number 1, stay in the hotel room. Number 2, lock that door. And number 3, hide under the bed, with a blanket over your head, preferably.
Yeah, that's just smart living. We've got all that and more this week on Wake Up College Football.
Wake Up College Football. That's the name of the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, were you going to say brought to you by? Because we don't have a sponsor right now.
Brought to you by Ryan's Winning Attitude.
Yep, that's me.
Okay, we have a theme for today's show that you're going to lead us into.
So because, it's college football after all, and that means academics, number one priority. So we're going to treat this week as kind of a progress report. We're not to midterms. We're definitely not to final exam. So nobody's grade is set in stone right now, unless you're 0-3, in which case you might be. Sorry, Vanderbilt. So we're gonna see who's answered some questions, and we're gonna see who still has some work left to do, just to figure out where they are. And I'm gonna start with what I think is the easiest one we're going to talk about.
Okay.
This was a question at the start of the year. Dan, can Ohio State reload?
So I'm gonna look at my camera right here.
Check. Ding.
So when I was watching this game, and I mentioned this on the podcast I do, I was thinking this to myself, like,
okay, say it's a solid verbal.
It's on SB Nation.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, and I was like, the answer to this question sounds like a 19th century inventor. Like, can they reload? And who is it going to be? Right. Samuel Weber Brown. Curtis Samuel, Mike Weber, and Noah Brown emphatically answer the question, who's going to step? Nope, that's them. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. No, they were, JT Barrett looked so, considering he had to do very little relatively in terms of number of passes he threw, how much he ran the ball, just like the most comfortable 4 touchdowns you've ever seen. Just like, yeah, okay, here you go. Just going to score 4 times, no big deal. Ohio State right now is super efficient on both sides of the ball. They don't turn the ball over. They don't make the mistakes that you're like, oh, that's a young team.
Right.
That's a team that's still figuring it out, especially on the road. In a big, crazy environment like Oklahoma, like what they did was definitely just moves them ahead of like, oh, Ohio State's a team to watch out for this year too. No, like it's too late. If you're not watching out, they've already smashed you in the skull.
Yes,
so
this is true. Yeah, throwing into that Ohio State secondary at this point looks like it's better than pretty much every, if not every secondary in the country as they're playing right now. It's like throwing into an abyss.
That
like
defense. That defense,
it's not coming back.
On the year, 8 red zone possessions faced, 1 touchdown allowed. That's that percentage is insane for that number of red zone possessions.
Correct.
So they're doing exactly what they want to do. They're going to bend, and they are not going to break right now.
I'm going to jump ahead because we do a show called Selection Committee every Monday.
Yeah.
They are one of my best. One of these teams.
Wow.
They are one of them.
What a
Spoiler, I know.
What a bold claim.
Maybe one of the best one of these teams.
Oh, so brave.
I know.
People really don't give you enough credit. Let's go to an unanswered question.
Okay.
And maybe you disagree with this one. Is this year's Alabama world-crushing Alabama or just really very good Alabama?
I think really very good.
Okay.
There are more concerns than the Alabama teams we've seen recently because Jalen Hurts is not yet, and I use that word underlined and circled, he is not yet as efficient as previous Alabama quarterbacks.
Right.
When they are seasoned in that system, you have to remember, he's a freshman. So yesterday they answered a very big question, can they run the ball? They usually are able to run the ball in previous iterations. This year with Damian Harris, who's now the clear best running back on the roster.
I think so, yeah.
The interior of that offensive line.
Although Jalen Hurts did a good job running.
That's true.
Better than he did. He was fine throwing the ball, but he wasn't like, oh, well, they've totally got that side of the ball fixed.
Shorter stuff was fine from Jalen Hurts. The touch needs to be worked on, I think, for more downfield throws. So they answered that question. The defense, certainly forcing turnovers and being patient.
And scoring off of them.
Scoring off of them. Heisman Trophy candidate.
Yeah, Alabama is looking very strong with John Allen in the Heisman race right now.
I would also add one more thing about Alabama. The fact that they can go down 24-3 and Lane Kiffin just, that emoji where it's just like, 45-7 was the score from that point.
It's just what's interesting about these Ole Miss blowing these leads now twice this season is that you look at it and you say, oh, they're blowing 3 touchdown leads.
Yeah.
It's not as if that happen. It doesn't happen slowly. It's not like, oh, this other team claws back in the game and Ole Miss goes into a shell and tries to run clock. They just are bad in such concentrated bursts.
Right.
In this game, when they went up by 24-3.
Yeah.
Less than 2 minutes of game time elapsed, and it's a 1-score game.
17,
I mean, it's just amazing how quickly they can. It's sort of like watching somebody shoot themselves in the foot, and the bullet ricochets off into a pile of unsecured fireworks that they had nearby. It just happens so quickly and so badly for this Ole Miss team.
Yeah, they just never seem to have a plan.
Yeah.
Like, they can only win in one way, which is like crazy back and forth shootout, where if you're going to consistently threaten double-digit wins playing the SEC West, there has to be a step 2.
All right, I'm gonna give you the stat lines of 2 SEC quarterbacks, and I want you to see if you can identify which is which.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Here we go.
This quarterback has completed 66% of his passes.
Impressive.
Has thrown 7 touchdowns and only has 1 pick.
Okay.
The next quarterback, SEC West quarterback, I'll even narrow it down for you.
Are these both SEC West quarterbacks necessarily? Okay.
Yeah. 58.3% of his passes.
Okay.
3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
Is the first one Trevor Knight?
The first one is Chad Kelly in the first half of games.
Oh, no!
The second one is Chad Kelly in the second half of games.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. It's tough. And
great.
listen, I think his stat lines would look like vastly different if they had a running game.
I guess so.
Because he wouldn't be forced to throw that much in the second half.
Yeah, I suppose that's true, but
that's rough.
He makes a lot of questionable decisions.
Yeah.
A lot.
I would not.
It's weird to say that about somebody who, was brandishing an automatic weapon for no reason.
And he's far and away the best quarterback in the SEC, so.
We can probably quietly disagree about that.
You want to get on the Drew Lock first half bandwagon with me? Let's ride. Let's ride.
I just don't know that he's like far and away the best quarterback.
Who is there?
I don't know. Trevor Knight. It's a really
threw like 400 times for 300 yards.
He won. Stupid.
Okay.
Let's go to another answered question.
Okay.
Is Louisville just trashing inferior competition?
There's some heat behind that question.
No.
There's some heat
because I think the answer to this question is no. I think Florida State is still, even though they didn't have Derwin James, even though they are dinged up, I think what
Front
Louisville
seven should be able to do more.
I think what Louisville was able to do against Florida State, wire to wire in this game, was so impressive that we can't. I mean, look, we were right to after 2 weeks to say, well, who have they played? Take all that in context. Right now, Louisville. Name a team that you're confident could stop Louisville's offense for 4 quarters.
For like all 4 quarters, like held them to like 17 points.
Yeah, sure. Name one. Can you?
I mean, Alabama would be the only to mind right now.
I'm not that confident in that.
So here, the other one that I am somewhat intrigued that can limit them would be Clemson.
Clemson, yep.
That when they play in 2 weeks.
Clemson is the most interesting of those teams. Yeah. But yeah, I mean. The other interesting thing about the Florida State-Louisville game that I don't think we're talking enough about, the Louisville defense.
Yeah.
They held Florida State to 4.2 yards per play. They held them to under 300 yards. The worst passing performance for the Seminoles since 2011.
Yeah.
Florida State was terrible on 3rd down. Dalvin Cook did nothing of consequence in this game. They are a team that is strong on both sides of the ball right now. And we're talking about Lamar Jackson because his numbers are just insane. What he's able to do with the ball is, it feels like every play could be a touchdown.
Right.
And that's great. But this is not a one-sided team by any means.
No.
And they have what I like about that is Lamar Jackson's going to have, at the very least, a bad half, if not a bad game. That's just sort of how it goes in college football. I think the Louisville defense is good enough that whenever that happens, they will stay in that game. I don't know that they'll necessarily win out. They still have a number of hurdles left, and besides Clemson, they still have to play Houston. But they are looking.
That's like Thanksgiving weekend. That's way down the line.
It's way down the line. But they're looking very complete right now.
Yeah, it was kind of cool that they held an all-hands meeting in the backfield of Florida State, that defense. They were just like, hey, if we could all just.
I mean, they also did that on the side. Yeah, it was just.
Yeah, it was just like,
boy.
oh, so I'll just. Yeah, we'll just Meet you at Francois? Meet you at Francois.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah, so that was the thing that did in Florida State, really, more than anything. The fact that the defense couldn't get off the field, or they did after a big Louisville play. And then the fact that offensively, they were just swarmed constantly. And, like, how do you get into any sort of rhythm when your offensive line is just toreadoring? It's not going to happen.
It wasn't ideal. Let's go to another unanswered question.
Okay.
Why do you pay North Dakota State to do this to you, FBS teams? And this is not Iowa exclusive.
Right.
6 teams now in a row have said, I'd like to offer you this check for cash money. I'd like you to come to my house. I'd like you to just beat the crap out of me.
I mean, there are people that pay good money for that in the real world.
I'm into some weird stuff.
Mistress Bison.
I'm into some weird...
You will love me.
Weird stuff. I mean, on the one hand, yes, stop scheduling North Dakota State because it doesn't seem like you're good enough to beat them.
My team did.
Yeah.
2020, go Ducks.
Yeah. But I don't know that Mark Helfrich will be the coach then, so you got that going for you. You want to talk about Oregon?
Yeah. Do you have a progress report question?
No, I mean the question more is who's out of the playoff right now of the Power 5 conferences? Is it or
And Notre
who do you
Dame.
feel has the hardest road right now? Is it the Pac-12? Is it the Big 12?
Well, Stanford looked more impressive than they did in their first week.
Yeah.
In the second week against USC. The Big 12, I think, right now,
Yeah.
with my lack of confidence in any team. So Oklahoma State had their bad loss, but I think people will understand that if Oklahoma State runs table from here on out, they might sort of get a pass on the way that game ended.
Maybe
More
so.
than a usual game.
It kind of weirdly depends on how good Central Michigan is, because if Central Michigan's not a good team at the end of the year, you'll say, well, yeah, we'll give you a pass for the loss. You still didn't play really well against the Chips.
This was like 3 years ago. We were like, well, maybe Minnesota's going to be really good.
Well,
It'd be a really impressive win
there
for
was
TCU.
that. There was that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do get the nice comeback when bouncing back from that loss against Pitt.
Okay, so as it stands now, the Pac-12 has 2 teams that you definitively say they are definitely not out of the playoff race. And that's Stanford and Washington.
Yes.
Whereas Oregon, I'm confident that Oregon is a Holiday Bowl team at best. That's my confidence right now.
Right.
I'm confident USC is a Vegas Bowl team at best. And UCLA is TBD, maybe an Alabama Bowl team. But yes, UCLA has too many deep flaws for me to consider them a playoff conversation team.
Sure.
So the Pac-12 is rough, but I think the Big 12 with Oklahoma's second loss, with Baylor's sluggishness early, with TCU, I mean, they didn't finish out the Arkansas game the way that I'm sure Frogs fans would have liked. I think it's the Big 12 just because I think the top of the Pac-12 is more impressive right now than the top of the Big 12.
I think that's right. And here's why. 3 weeks in, the Pac-12 has played very little conference play so far.
Yeah.
The Big 12 has played none.
Yeah.
These are the undefeated teams in the Pac-12. Stanford, Washington, Arizona State, which looked real dicey on a weeknight, and Utah.
Yep. Yeah.
These are the undefeated teams for the Big 12, which has played 0 conference games so far, with the exception of, I think, the TCU-Iowa State game.
Yeah.
West Virginia and Baylor. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, Oklahoma losing its second game and looking bad in the process. I don't know what I mean, technically, they can still they can still be undefeated Big 12 champions.
Yeah.
I don't know that would be enough at this point.
And they'll be a Fiesta Bowl contender.
And Texas.
Yeah, what? This is not an unexpected result. What happened in the Texas game?
I mean, the manner in which it happened is a little bit unexpected.
Yes, it was ugly, but true freshman quarterback, leaky defense.
Yeah.
So sometimes there will be good Shane Bichelle, true freshman quarterback, finding guys deep and sort of being fearless, and sometimes there will be pedestrian Shane Bichelle.
And hurt Shane Bichelle as well.
Hurt Shane Bichelle. The problem is that has to be against TCU or Oklahoma, the pedestrian. Cal's defense is something that he should be able to pick on more with the talent he had around them. Cal allowed like 300 yards rushing to Texas. Texas and Oregon were the only 2 teams yesterday that I think allowed rushed for 300 yards in a losing effort, which is very difficult to do. The Texas secondary was awful. It's Chad Hudson. I mean, it was such a no-name guy for Cal. He's a former walk-on that caught like 200 yards, where Davis Webb was really, really good. Davis Webb does what a good quarterback will do against a suspect secondary, which was just torch. And so good for Cal, because they've had so many heartbreaking late-night shootout losses recently, and the fact that they were able to convert a win late, 50-43, wonderful.
They needed
good for
it,
Cal.
yeah. Okay. Let's go to what I think is the hardest unanswered question.
Okay.
Who is the second best team in the SEC West?
At this point, it's A&M.
Okay.
I think A&M has fewer questions on both sides of the ball after we saw what Travion Williams was able to do last night against Auburn.
Right.
They have a legitimate star running back.
Yeah.
They have a legitimate, very, very good defense.
Yep.
So in turn, I mean, Trevor Knight threw 0 interceptions against a good defense last night. I don't think he's particularly good. I don't think he's particularly efficient.
But he knows what his job is, and he does that.
Yes, he has the talent. I'm more concerned with Texas A&M about the offensive coaching staff and just making the easy decision on offense instead of trying to throw it in the red zone constantly, things like that.
Right.
Texas A&M right now, because of defense and being able to run the ball, which is a pretty reliable cocktail in the SEC West, they're my number 2 team.
Okay, I think that's fair. Arkansas still has a very interesting case to be made.
They struggled against Louisiana Tech.
They did.
And so I'd like to see them emphatically beat a decent team.
Okay.
Or not emphatically, but just like comfortably.
I think that's probably fair.
We saw what Texas A&M did against Prairie View and A&M.
Yes. Prairie View. You didn't deserve that. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to give you one more answered question.
Hopefully it's not about Oregon.
This one's easy.
All the questions were answered yesterday.
Will Notre Dame have what it takes to handle a very tough 2016 schedule?
So the answer to me is kind of.
Okay.
It's INC, incomplete. So
see, you're the new teacher at school.
Yes.
It's like, I can give you a D.
No, I'm not Mr. Rubenstein. Call me Dan.
I don't see why I have to give you an F.
Call me Teach.
D+. That's passing. We just want to move you along to the next game. Here, go play some bad ACC team.
So
that'll boost your confidence.
This will be a question that needs to be answered by Notre Dame's offensive coaching staff of, yes, we have Deshaun Kaiser. Yes, we have decent pass catchers. Yes, we have a decent offensive line. Yes, we have a decent running game.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty good offense at the very least. Let's open it up. Let's test teams. Let's get creative. They were not creative against Michigan State. Notre Dame tried to out Michigan State. How does that ever work? How does that ever work?
It's like trying to out Bama.
Yes, don't do it. Do your thing.
Notre Dame's defense, man.
Trash.
Brian Van Gorder is. I'm just going to read some numbers here, and I want you to. Can we just get the camera on Dan so he can react while I read these numbers? Okay. Yards per play allowed. Notre Dame ranks 102nd in the nation. Yards per pass allowed. 121st. Yards per rush allowed. 84th. Third down conversions percentage allowed. 89th. Tackles for loss recorded 100th.
Yeah, they're not.
This is an aggressively bad Notre Dame defense.
Which is weird because at the very least these past few years they've been fine.
Yeah.
And sort of making their way to this newer BVG, Brian Van Gorder system, has been struggle.
No, I mean the teams that they have so many teams left that can do all of the things on offense that Notre Dame can't stop. This feels like 8-4 is best case scenario right now.
Yeah.
I
the
don't feel
Notre
great.
Dame game seems like it's going to be such
trash. Please, we don't have to air this game. There's a different way. Let's make better choices,
let's
America.
Be old-fashioned about
Let's be different this year.
Pay-per-view.
All right, we're going to go to one last unanswered question. This is a very short one.
Yeah.
Miami?
Ooh. Can I do my face? Like just a facial reaction? Yeah. Say it again.
Miami? Good.
So Miami won, has a very good coach.
Yeah, Miami in a road environment that I think we wanted it too badly.
Tricky and
non-Miami America. We were all like, this is it's gonna happen. Stupid Miami scheduled this game on the road in Boone, and they're just gonna And Brad Kyle looked great. The running game looked great. The defense has been very, very formidable so far. I will be very interested to see what Miami does in ACC play this year.
I'm going to coin a term right now. It's GTS. Miami against App State, a tricky team on the road.
Yeah.
They did GTS. They did good team stuff. Right? I mean, it's so
Sure,
reductive
yeah,
and simple.
yeah.
But
And it's not what Miami has done in years past.
on a tough road environment, they came out very quickly on offense. They played with tempo. Brad Kaya was efficient. Defensively, they swarmed App State, which is a tricky offense to deal with. The front seven of Miami looked very good. And most of all, they just looked much more talented. And that's not always the case with teams that recruit really well. And that hasn't been the case with Miami's defense in recent years. They looked more talented, they looked more prepared, and they looked a lot more dangerous, which I think their schedule gets a lot tougher moving forward. I think they have a bye week, and then Georgia Tech and Florida State and North Carolina, all these teams.
Yeah.
But Miami is doing good team stuff, which is encouraging.
Which is all you can ask at this point in the season. Are there any games that you feel like we haven't touched that you would like to talk about? The whole SEC East remains a total freaking mess at this point. Even the teams that won. I don't know that. I mean, you can start with Georgia. Still has no reliable running game to speak of. Nick Chubb is not looking great. Jacob Eason had points of success, but it was there were a number of Georgia fans who walked away from that game feeling like, oh yeah, Georgia, we figured. I don't know, man. We are one fluky Missouri fumble at the end of that game away from like, nope, you didn't win it after all. So, okay. Still have special teams problems. Florida now doesn't have a quarterback. Still has a bunch of problems. Like, the offense didn't look great against North Texas. Looked serviceable.
Probably has one of the best 5 defenses in the country.
Tennessee basically wins because Ohio refuses to go for touchdowns on I don't know what the Bobcats were doing in that game, because it's just like losing this game close does not make people go, oh, Ohio, good job, really proud of you.
At least Tennessee can still start pointing to their defense, which is now more beat up than it was going into the week. And Josh Dobbs, just another conservative offensive effort, not throwing down the field until the very end, a nice 20-yard touchdown pass. But I'm going to focus on more positive things. Is what I'm going to focus on. 1, Houston. Thursday night, going to Cincy. It has been
in a weird game.
Yeah, it is. I think it's mid or to late November of 2014 since they've allowed a team to rush for 4 yards in a game per carry. I was like, total? That's 4 yards. It's very good. It's very good. Not a lot of people talk about it, but they've held teams to 3, 2, sometimes 1 yard, sometimes negative yards. So their defense has been unbelievable, and that was a slow starting game. It was 10-all at halftime. They got a safety in the third quarter, and it opened up with some turnovers. Stephen Taylor's a great linebacker for Houston. So encouraging, and I wish I could point to a team. I think they go to Navy in a couple weeks, but other than that, they don't have USF, at least until the championship game in the American. So their schedule's looking real nice. Their schedule's looking
in theory, nice. They do have. Greg Ward has to stay healthy.
Yes, that's the
thing. He had to run a lot in that game. He took a lot of, and Cincinnati knew what to do. They were like, we're just going to try to hit him as hard as we can. Over and over and over. And their offensive line play in that game was also.
That's true.
I don't feel great about it.
For as much as it wounded me emotionally, spiritually, and physically, Nebraska winning a big game late in September. Tommy Armstrong needed IV on the sidelines after he was cramping up, comes back in and ran them down the field, and they reacted to Oregon's slightly improved defense impressively. Big third down conversion after big third down conversion, which is maddening on the inside. They got. I want to position this in a way that points me as not being bitter.
Well, that's not going to work.
They took advantage of opportunities that were presented to them, which is what pretty good teams do.
Do you give us your real quick perspective on Oregon going for so many 2-point? What, 1 for 5? On 2-point conversions?
See, that doesn't bother me as much because they've had success doing that. I think they made the reads within their system properly. They just didn't execute. But yes, at a certain point, let's just kick some extra points. The thing that bothered me in this game was the fact that when they had opportunities to proverbially step on Nebraska's neck. So a minute before halftime, getting the ball back up 21-7. That's when you go tempo, you go short passes, you get the ball to speed, just keep the chains moving. Keep Nebraska on their heels.
Oregon stuff.
3rd and 6, they run the ball. 3rd and 6, they run it. And not that Dakota Prukop was having all that great a day scanning through the Nebraska defense, but put yourselves in position to be aggressive, not just on 2-point conversions. And near the end of the game, they screwed that up. They had a weird holding call. They had the false start. Nebraska's false start that it's a mess. Oregon, it's just making me upset. Nebraska's the better team. Let's move on.
That's fair. Let's talk about some interesting, as of now, unranked 3-0 teams. I'm going to throw a few at you. You mentioned earlier, USF
Yeah.
Stomped Syracuse on the road.
Yeah.
They right now on a yards per play
Had a great burst moment,
Yeah.
rolled off a bunch of touchdowns.
that
yeah.
defense on a yards per play basis, and granted they still have some big opponents left to play. Top 20 right now in the nation. They host Florida State
Yeah.
this week in Tampa at noon. After that Louisville game, I mean, who knows what's going to happen there? Maybe Florida State is going to take out all of their Louisville-related anger out on the Bulls. But right now, USF and Willie Taggart, that's a very fun team to keep an eye on. That I think you're right. We could get to the end of the season, Houston USF, and be like, wow, that is a game that really is going to boost somebody's profile, whoever wins.
So let me ask, let's fast forward even more.
Yeah.
Do you think Willie Taggart is going to wear the same sweater vest that Gus Malzahn wears at Auburn?
Oh my God.
Or is he just going to go for his own new
He
look?
can't get a better job than Auburn?
Oh.
Harsh. Yeah, I said it. I'm not sorry. Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech right now has jumped almost 20 percentage points in third down conversion from last year.
It helps
to
when
this
you're
year.
healthy.
It helps when you're healthy. Yeah, they're averaging nearly 6.5 yards per play. Georgia Tech looks good. I mean, granted, Georgia Tech looked good early last year.
Yeah.
Got real banged up. Things went south very quickly for the Jackets, but
I think they could be back to their place as dangerous ACC team.
Dangerous ACC team?
Not threatening to win division or conference, but like, oh god dang it, we're going to Atlanta, and this is not going to be fun.
but like 9-win ACC team
I think
possibly.
that's not unreasonable.
Okay. Dan, do you know where the leading rusher in college football plays right now? Think about all the great rushers that are all over the Power 5 conferences and the SEC.
I guess it's
and the
not.
Big 12.
I guess it's not Lamar Jackson.
It's not Lamar Jackson, no.
So the leading rusher in the nation.
Yeah.
Can you give me a region?
It's not too far from where you grew up.
Okay. So it's not going to be Nate Stark.
It's a day's drive. It's
is it
less
Donnell
than a day-
Pumphrey?
Yeah, it's
Donnell Pumphrey!
San Diego State. He's the country's leading rusher. Right now, he's averaging right around 200 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns a game. San Diego State, I mean, the Cal win looks even better now, so they got that going for them. They're a fun team to watch out for. And last but not least, Western Michigan.
Row that boat. Sorry, Illinois. Sorry.
They're one of 3 teams in the nation that hasn't lost a turnover. They average 5 penalties a game. They're like, what I like about Western Michigan is, PJ Fleck is all, attack your enemies at all times, even when you're sleeping, kill, everything is glory. But this is a very disciplined Broncos team. They now have 2 Big Ten wins over Northwestern and Illinois.
Yeah, I guess technically they're Chicago's one true Big Ten team.
They're Chicago's Big Ten team, Western Michigan.
Yeah, no, that's fun. At this point, after watching yesterday's games and the penalties and the breakdowns and
a lot
the
of
nonsense calls.
A lot of questionable refereeing.
A lot of questionable refereeing.
Yeah.
If you were to just ask me to watch a team that doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, makes smart decision, doesn't really turn the ball over a lot, I'd be
not Oregon.
Not Oregon.
Not
no,
Oregon
no.
football.
I would say, well, I don't know what their talent level is like, but I think they're going to win the national championship. Because that's basically all it takes now to consistently be good.
That's fair. Before we wrap up, you want to take some questions?
Let's load this up.
I should mention Western Michigan did send me the PJ Fleck in a boat bobblehead. I forgot to bring it down, but we're going to have it. We're going to put it on the set.
All right. We're going to find some questions.
Yeah, I don't think we need
eventually. College football week 3. That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Come on, Grandpa.
Louisville is better than Michigan. We didn't mention Michigan. Really sloppy day yesterday.
Very sloppy day for Michigan. The good news is Michigan still has an absolutely lethal special teams unit.
True.
It helped that Colorado at one point just the punter kicked it into one of the linemen's armpit.
Yeah.
Michigan is, I think, the biggest unknown quantity. It's tough. I think Michigan and Washington are the 2 teams that I'm like, I really don't know where the ceiling is for them right now because they still haven't played anybody that I'm super confident can test them. They haven't had to play in a tough environment in any sense of the word so far. Those are the 2 teams that I feel like have the most potential to either finish in the top 4 or finish in the 20s.
Yeah, that's fair. The big thing with Washington to me that is encouraging is the fact that they're completely shutting down teams. A lot of teams can score on lesser talented defenses, and Washington has shown their ability to do that. But the fact that they're holding teams down defensively for 4 quarters, even the 2s and 3s, and that's the big key, is that they're building depth.
That's true.
So the 2s and 3s are playing all of second halves, which allows them, when they play Oregon, when they play Stanford, against quality offenses, to come in and be able to rotate guys and not fall off defensively.
Stanford's offense is very quality, you monster.
A lot of Louisville fans. Somebody says Cal is garbage, which disagree. Cal's fun.
The refs were garbage.
The refs were garbage. Ohio State over Louisville. Toledo is 3-0. We didn't mention Toledo.
Toledo is 3-0. Yeah, they're Georgia Southern's 3-0.
Okay.
Wake Forest is 3-0.
Yeah.
Army is 3-0.
So we have a lot of Ohio State talking here. So my question to you is, after last night's Michigan State win and yesterday's Michigan win, who matches up better against Ohio State? A team that looks more complete than any team in the conference, but so Michigan State has had more recent success against this Ohio State system.
Right.
But Michigan certainly is on equal footing, let's say, with Michigan State coaching-wise. We like what they're able to put together.
Somebody's so mad that you said that.
Well, no, that was a compliment to Michigan State.
I know, but that's why Michigan fans are mad about it.
Oh, Michigan fans are mad about it. Who cares?
Yeah. Who do I think is
Yeah. And so the Michigan State-Ohio State game is in East Lansing this year?
I don't actually remember.
Okay.
Let's say that's. I feel like that's.
It's definitely in Columbus, the Michigan game.
Yeah. I guess I'm gonna go with Michigan State right now.
Okay.
But I don't. It feels like a coin flip, to be perfectly honest, and that has more to do with the fact that after the Oklahoma game, and granted, this was a game that if you listen to people like Bud Elliott, they'll tell you like the talent level just.
It's absurd.
Night and day between those two teams. And so I guess that maybe favors Michigan in terms of like what they've been able to do overall in recruiting in recent years. I don't know though, man. I don't feel great about either of those teams just because Michigan State, they got one win against Notre Dame team that I feel increasingly less good about. And Michigan is fine, is good, but it has yet to really have the screws been put to them. So.
If they played tomorrow, I would say Michigan State.
Okay,
The fact that they're playing near the end of the season and that Michigan is probably more able to survive injuries or weirdness, I'm going to say then. But as it stands right now, I'm going to say Michigan State.
Okay. Any last question you want to get to before we wrap up?
There's a lot of Louisville fans that are very happy. They're up early and they're very happy.
I mean, boy, that was a whooping.
Yeah, that's it.
And it was what was impressive about it was we've all watched. We watched this game 2 years ago?
Yeah.
We've seen Florida State be unflinching in the face of a big halftime deficit. And Louisville was just like, yeah, too bad. We have more gasoline in the can, and we're going to keep pouring it on this fire.
Yeah, the difference is Florida State may have had their best player ever playing quarterback.
There's also that.
Yeah.
There's also that. Dan, I think that's all we've got for the week.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for watching. This has been a fun one. Thank you for your progress report. And my mom is not going to be happy with my grades from yesterday.
No, not.
She is not going to be happy with my fan-watching grades.
Your brother, the Washington alum, is the real achiever in the family now.
This is true. So thank you very much for watching. Like it, share it, comment. We'll keep answering your questions down there in the comments as best we can. Listen to the Shutdown Fullcast. Listen to the Solid Verbal. We have all sorts of fun all week long. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.